Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to be looking at animation. You're going to be moving in time and space. It's going to give the illusion of nice fluid movement when in fact you're simply coupling a number of timer firings with a set amount or a predetermined movement within the page. So let's go ahead and take a look at what this looks like in code. We're going to start off with some boilerplate. Then we're going to add a couple of divs. Start with our first one. We'll set a number of properties. We've done this before, but I'm going to go ahead and walk through what those are. The first one is this z index, and we'll set that to 1. The next is the position. We'll set that to absolute. We'll then set our left to 0 pixels, then our top to 0 pixels as well. Next, we'll set our width to 25 pixels. And we'll do the same for our height. Then we'll set our border radius. We'll use this for to make our shape round. We want it to look like a ball. Finally, we'll set our background to black. Now let's go ahead and add an ID. We will call it ball. And we'll also add an onClick event in where we will call an init function. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look and see what that looks like on the page. Let's go ahead and reload, and we can see there our ball. Now I'm going to add one more div, and this one will simply be an outline of the area we're going to be working on. I'm going to go ahead and cut and paste onto the document here, and you can see here I have the same I'm going below the ball on the z index. Then I set the absolute position, start at the same location, width and height is 525 by 425, and then in this case I'm using a solid border of 1 pixel. So let's go ahead and save, reload the page, and you can see there that we now have a border that we can see. Now let's move over to the script section, and let's write a few of the variables that we will use. We will use an X to keep track of the X position within the page. Likewise for Y. We will then also create a rate of change for X. We will set that to 2. And then a rate of change for Y. We'll set that to 3. We'll add a counter to keep track of how many times a timer has been called. We'll set a number of time steps that we're going to execute. Time steps. We'll set it at 500. And finally, a variable for the ball. Now we're going to go ahead and write our init function. And within it, we're going to get a handle on that ball element and assign it to our variable. And we will use this throughout the rest of this small program to manipulate that element. We'll then call an animate function, which we're going to write in a minute. And now we can move to writing that animate function. Within the function, we're going to write a conditional statement to limit the number of times this timer executes to that which we defined in time steps. So we're going to enter if counter is less than time steps, then we move the ball, and we'll write this function in a minute. And then we'll call the function again with set time out. This function, as we know, takes 2 parameters. The first one is the name of the function it's going to call. The second one is the time. And we'll start out pretty slowly, moving the ball every second. Now we need a counter so that we can increment the number of times this function has been called. Finally, we're going to write a move ball function. And here we're going to use ball style, just like in the HTML section. We're going to set ball style, then left, and here we're going to set the pixels. So it's going to be x plus pixels. And then we'll do the same for the y. And here we're going to set this is not left, but this is top. Then we change this to y px. Okay. The last thing we need to do is we need to update the value of y with the rate of change. And so we will do, let me do x first. We're going to do dx and then y dy. Okay, so let's overview what we've done. We created an HTML document. We then added a couple of divs. The first one is a ball. The second one is a frame for the ball, as we can see here. Then we created a small JavaScript program. We created a number of variables, a couple of them to keep track of the ball, the other two to set the rate of change of that ball, then a counter to know how many times we've called the function, the animation function, and then finally a number of time steps to move through. Lastly, we have a ball variable where we get a handle on that element on the page. Now within the init, after that, we animate. The animate calls at this point every 1,000 milliseconds, or every second, and it only does that as long as the counter is less than the number of time steps. Finally, at the bottom here, we move the ball. That is, we set the position of that ball element within the page, and we increase it on each subsequent call. Okay, so let's go see what that does on the page. We go ahead and reload to get the new code. I'm going to go ahead and click, and let's see if that moves. Yes, it's in fact moving. You can see there that it moves pretty slowly, but it is moving across the page. So let's go ahead and reload this page, go back to the code, and here we can change this to 15 so we can make it much faster. Let's go ahead and take a look. And yes, this is flying through the page now. Now, your task is to be able to stop the ball when it gets to the boundaries. And let me show you here in my demo what I mean by that. As you'll see, as the ball reaches the boundaries here, it bounces. And it does that for 500 time steps, and then it stops. Now, how do you do that within your code? You can do it right here. Think about the coordinate system and what needs to happen when you hit those boundaries. And you can actually write this in 4 lines of code. You can do it in more, of course, but you can do it in as little as 4 lines of code. Think of your conditions. Think of what happens. You can even write some of these values to the screen so you can start to observe and figure out what you need to do. It should be a nice, challenging problem. It should give you an opportunity to stretch in all the concepts that we have been covering. So enjoy and have some fun. So with that, I'll close and say goodbye.